Good evening and welcome to The Frame, an initiative of Access Framingham. I'm Brendan Fitzpatrick. We begin tonight with a roundup of Tuesday's City Council meeting, which featured updates on two major ongoing stories across the community. The City Council unanimously approved a pair of motions that would officially demand that Tenet Healthcare Corp., the Texas-based operator of Metro West Medical Center and its subsidiary sites, to permit Framingham Union Hospital nurses to conduct a vote to unionize, as well as to call on Tenet heads to appear before the city government shortly after the turn of the new year. Officials with the Massachusetts Nurses Association have alleged that Tenet is deliberately blocking a union vote. At the same time, residents continued to voice their growing concerns on what they say are declining medical services, including the closure of the Metro West Wellness Center's therapy pools, along with dwindling pay, benefits, and staffing. Tom Chaput has been a nurse at Metro West Medical Center since 1980, as he currently works in the operating room.
This community is growing. You can tell by the apartment buildings that are going up all around. People are coming in, businesses are coming in, and the hospital seems to be shrinking.
Cheryl Tully-Stoll, the former at-large city councilor and former chair of the Framingham Board of Selectmen, requested to the current council that Tenet's brass in Texas attend a meeting to address the community's list of concerns.
This isn't something that is necessarily a done deal going in the wrong direction, but it's going to take some seismic change in how we deal with the hospital as a community and as a state to possibly get something moving that works for them and works for the people who live here.
The city council voted 11-0 to write a pair of letters addressed directly to Tenet. One would demand that they immediately permit an election for Framingham Union Hospital nurses seeking the MNA's representation, while the other would request that Tenet partake in one of the council's January meetings. As of the time of this recording, Tenet's media officials have not returned the Frame's request for comment. Meanwhile, it was announced this past Friday that Louise Miller, Framingham's chief financial officer and director of administration and finance, has resigned, effective December 31st. Mayor Charlie Sositsky confirmed the resignation in a letter addressed to the city council. In that letter, he wrote, quote, "I want to assure everyone that we will take all appropriate steps to ensure minimal disruptions to our financial operations. Ms. Miller has agreed to an orderly and smooth transition, and she will prepare transition documents that include the current status of all financial responsibilities and tasks. I want to thank Ms. Miller for her commitment to prepare these documents, and I thank her for her nearly 2 years of service to the city." This comes following multiple recent instances of the city council calling for increased financial transparency during their meetings. Those were conversations that Miller was heavily involved with. Even with no full-time accountant or assistant accountant at the city's disposal, multiple councilors, such as District 8's John Stefanini, a member of the finance subcommittee himself, have been trying to ensure that Framingham's key financial records are accessible to the public.
We should never cower or be apologetic for standing up for the taxpayers of our community and making sure that we get the information, they get the information, and that the procedures are followed.
The Framingham Charter Review Committee also met this week on Monday to discuss potential changes to the City Council and School Committee's composition. They're in the middle of their drafting process as they gather ideas to be detailed during a public hearing before finalizing their recommended changes to the Framingham Home Rule Charter and presenting those to the City Council for approval. Articles 2 and 4 were addressed this week. All Charter Commission members present voted in favor of having their drafter write language that would make the process of filling vacancies in the school committee similar to that of the City Council through a special election. No draft changes were made to changing term limits on the City Council or school committee or in staggering election years for those positions. However, the committee had a mixed reaction to the idea of changing the size and makeup of the City Council. Some members, like Jonna Rubin, were not in favor of increasing the number of seats beyond its current mark of 11. However, District 7 City Councilor Leora Malik spoke about her own experience and how more members of the council could be beneficial.
The city of Boston only has 13 councilors. We're Framingham. Do we need 15? If the city of Boston can do it with 13, 15 is insane.
it is a tremendous amount of work in terms of the expectations, I think, that residents have of city councilors. So I think the more councilors could really be helpful.
No draft changes on that front were made, though the committee did vote to send out more information on a number of potential city council makeups to the community in the near future. They will also request to have the deadline to make their recommendation to the city council pushed back from May 1st to June 30th of next year. Framingham police have begun an investigation into how the large menorah set up at the Framingham Center Common was vandalized Saturday evening. A press release from the police department explained that they received reports on Sunday that the menorah was knocked over, with scratches on it and 2 light bulbs damaged. A sign supporting Israel next to the menorah was also missing. The menorah was set up earlier this month in commemoration of Hanukkah, which ended last Friday, the 15th. Police are looking into the possibility of this act being a hate crime. The person responsible has not yet been identified, according to police, though authorities added that video surveillance of the area shows an individual knocking the menorah over at around 6:51 Saturday night. In a statement expressing sadness over the incident, the mayor and first lady of the city said, quote, "We urge everyone to respect the sanctity of all religious symbols and hope that during this holiday season, we make an extra effort to appreciate everyone's religious beliefs." During Tuesday's City Council meeting, Sisitsky said that the decision to release the video footage to the public would be up to the police department, and that their investigation is ongoing at this time. Anyone with any tips on the matter are advised to contact Framingham Police. Meanwhile, Framingham is one step closer towards getting funding for a school building project on the south side, as the city has been given the green light to partake in the Massachusetts School Building Authority. The MSBA will now work alongside city and school officials to develop the best plan for developing the replacement of Hemingway Elementary School. The City Council and School Committee authorized a $9 million agreement earlier this year for the acquisition of the Sisters of St. Joseph's property along Bethany Road, which could be primed for the development of the school. Proponents of the project say it's a way to increase learning and recreational space while providing more equity to families in that part of Framingham, where about 2/3 of students currently live. As of now, just 3 of the city's 9 elementary schools are located south of Route 9. A public safety meeting took place Saturday morning at Fuller Middle School as residents of the Warren Oaks and Musterfield area showed their concerns on a number of issues, especially regarding speeding along Warren Road. With the Fuller and McCarthy schools in that area, residents expressed worries to city officials and police officers on hand, detailing incidents of property damage and near misses due to drivers being negligent. While Chief Engineer of the city's Public Works Department and Vice Chair of the Framingham Traffic Commission, Bill Sedowitz, explained that regulatory speed limits handed down by the state are often hard to enforce, citizens still brought up suggestions like speed bumps, raised sidewalks, and hiring more traffic enforcement officers to curb speeding on Warren Road, which has speed limits spanning between 25 and 30 miles an hour. Deputy Police Chief Sean Riley told attendees that the department tries to send resources out based on the traffic data that they analyze.
Every neighborhood meeting we go to, in the 22 years I've been with the Framingham PD, the #1 subject in every community meeting is what exactly we're talking about, is speed. It is the biggest concern in every neighborhood. It comes down to, okay, when we deploy the resources and where, we're limited on resources, and that's happening all over the city.
That's plenty of municipal news for you to follow up on, so if you want to read more about what you've seen tonight, visit our website, www.theframe.news. Our latest information and features we have to offer can be found there, as well as our community's local Instagram feeds. You could stay up to date with us, from need-to-know announcements to local events, by logging on there. Also, sign up for our weekly newsletter to never miss a story from The Frame. And a reminder that we have a tip line open if you feel so inclined. You can email us at theframe@accessfram.tv or give us a call at 508-216-0003. Back in September of this year, we set out to learn more about a community conversation series regarding loneliness. The Frame's Mackenzie Wright took a visit to Temp Bethel Shalom, one of the many organizers of the series called Together in a Loneliness Epidemic. Since then, our conversation about loneliness and isolation has continued. And today, Mackenzie joins us with a more in-depth look at how this epidemic is impacting one group in particular. Mackenzie?
Brendan, there's no question about it. Loneliness and isolation is felt far and wide. But throughout the many conversations I've had with members of our community, experts say there are demographics especially vulnerable to loneliness. A big and more obvious one, they say, is our elderly and senior populations, who may be less mobile or live far away from busy family members and loved ones. There's growing concern, however, for our children, teens, and young adults, the level of loneliness and isolation they're reeling from. It's been a topic of discussion for nearly a decade, but of course, COVID-19, a pandemic shrouded in isolation, made the epidemic of loneliness even worse.
Loneliness. There are plenty of words to describe the feeling of it. Empty, forlorn, isolated.
I guess depression would sort of be on the same level as loneliness.
Fall in and not want to share those feelings.
A lot of people feel lonely. You can be lonely even when you're surrounded by people.
Feeling a disconnect from others, a gap between what we are faced with and the interactions we long for. It's something we've all experienced in one way or another, and yet loneliness finds a way to make us feel, well, alone.
That loneliness and that isolation really causes like a disconnect.
The world is so big and scary, the world changes so quickly, and people kind of just get lost in the chaos.
It's a busy time of year. Holidays and festivities, packed schedules, a new year just days away, and with it, a solemn anniversary lurks. Soon enough, it'll be 4 years since the world was stopped in its tracks and everything changed.
Tonight, the nation and the world continue to reel under the onslaught of the pandemic. This country, this generation, is being put to a test.
There are now more than 100,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus here in the U.S.
The feelings of isolation throughout the pandemic.
The impact of socialization from COVID.
During COVID, they were really experiencing, of course, the physical isolation.
The COVID pandemic, oh my God.
COVID-19. Where there was talk of loneliness and isolation, the pandemic, too, crept its way into the conversation.
I believe that that period of COVID created a lot of isolation, and right now we're looking more carefully at the repercussions, and people are aware of it.
That's Vicki Zimmon. She's the call center manager of Framingham's Call to Talk office, located within United Way of Tri-County, right here in downtown Framingham. Call to Talk is a 24/7, 365 days a year confidential hotline where people can call for mental health and emotional support. It's a tight-knit group of people who keep this operation going, and they are ready to provide compassionate listening to anyone who calls.
That's okay. And you can feel okay about that.
Program Manager Maggie McNeil says receiving calls from people experiencing loneliness is nothing new. But during and after the pandemic, she did notice a shift in who was calling.
In terms of the loneliness category, there might be people who maybe weren't reaching out and feeling that way before. So for example, we saw a lot of younger folks reaching out who, maybe were in that high school, college age where everything went virtual and they weren't able to see their friends, right? Or it was their first year of college and they came home about halfway through, even the middle school age.
Data released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in 2020 from March to October, when the pandemic was in full swing, found that mental health-related emergency department visits, including suicide-related issues, increased by 24% for children 5 to 11 years old and 31% for those 12 to 17 when compared to 2019. CDC analysis in 2022 noted more than a third, that's 37% of high school students, reported they experienced poor mental health during the pandemic. 44% reported they felt persistently sad or hopeless. The pandemic has certainly exacerbated these challenges, but they're not necessarily new. The CDC's Youth Risk Behavioral Surveillance System found that in the 10 years leading up to the pandemic, there was about a 40% increase in feelings of persistent sadness and hopelessness, and/or suicidal thoughts and behaviors among youth. It's an important distinction to make that these mental health crises, so tightly bound to loneliness and feelings of isolation, existed long before the pandemic, because it may have an impact on how we deal with it and how we talk about it.
The physical isolation made it okay to say, I'm lonely. But now that we're not as physically isolated, we're embarrassed that we're still emotionally feeling alone. This epidemic was going on before the other epidemic, the big epidemic, right? The loneliness epidemic was happening. It got some attention during the COVID pandemic because it was so in your face and because it was happening to everyone. And then it's my perception that as we want to get back to normal, whatever that means, we kind of want to pretend that we're not lonely anymore. And so the attention it was getting is maybe fading again. But I think it's probably been here pretty steadily the whole time, and sometimes we see it and sometimes we don't.
Rabbi Allison Poirier of Temple Beth Shalom goes on to say that she's noticed teens are especially caught up in this crisis. If you'd like to watch the full package on youth loneliness and hear more from her and firsthand accounts from students and others regarding loneliness in the pandemic, you can visit our website. For The Frame, I'm Mackenzie Wright.
And we thank you very much for that, Mackenzie. And as previously mentioned, another demographic particularly vulnerable to loneliness is the senior population. The Frame will continue to follow this topic and the unique challenges faced by our seniors. So please stay tuned with us. We'll keep you updated as our loneliness conversation progresses. Additionally, Call to Talk did share with us that amid the holiday season, they get an influx of calls from community members in need of their services. During and after a holiday, they notice people who may be anxious from spending time with family members or feeling lonely. If you find yourself needing to connect with Call to Talk, dial any of the numbers on your screen. They're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year, and are also a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline Crisis Center. Let's take a look now at the weather forecast for the next few days. Friday calls for sunny skies with highs in the upper 30s and lows cooling down to the low 20s. On Saturday, expect a mostly cloudy outlook with a few breaks of sunshine, hopefully. Highs in the low 40s and lows around 30 degrees. Cloud coverage seems set to continue into Christmas Eve on Sunday, highs in the mid-40s and lows in the low 30s. All in all, it's shaping up to be more of a green Christmas this year. No blizzards in the Metro West area for Santa to navigate Sunday night into early Monday morning. And while we're on the topic of rough weather, Mayor Sisitsky has advised that following the intense storm earlier this week, the city's yard waste facility on Dudley Road will be reopened from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Friday and Saturday only. Anyone with a valid permit can bring down tree branches and other debris from the storm to the site. Shifting gears to what else is happening across our community now, as we've got a few pieces of transportation-based news. Framingham has been allocated about $803,000 in state funding for transportation infrastructure improvements, road and bridge preservation, regional transit improvements, and expansions to multi-use paths are just some of the eligible uses for the money, which was made available through the Fair Share Amendment in Massachusetts. That's the mandate approved last year by voters that added a 4% surtax to incomes north of $1 million annually. And speaking of regional transportation, the Metro West Regional Transit Authority is reminding residents that on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, services will be limited. No fixed route, shuttle, and Catch Connect services will be offered on those days, while demand response trips will be available on a limited basis. Normal MWRTA services will resume the day after those two respective holidays. The fun of the holiday season will not stop in Framingham on the 25th, as residents can skate at Loring Arena on Fountain Street for just 60 cents per person next week. As the anniversary is celebrating its 60th anniversary, Mayor Sisitsky has brought public skating prices for residents down from $5 to 60 cents from December 26th through the 30th. Skating will be offered from 10 a.m. to noon from Tuesday through Friday, as well as from 2:30 to 3:50 p.m. on Saturday the 30th. From there, the Friends of Framingham Trails will be getting ready to ring 2024 in with a New Year's Eve celebration at the Cochituate Rail Trail. Community members are invited to attend and enjoy food, drinks, music, fire pits, and other family-friendly offerings.
Everyone is really excited about it. It's different. We don't have a New Year's celebration here in Framingham. So we've had different people from different parts of the city come together to help us.
Families can come, celebrate. It's just an opportunity to realize that the trail's here, to use the trail, and to be into community.
The free event will run from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. next Sunday, the 31st. If you're taking part in those events or any other holiday festivities, we would love to hear from you. Look for us on social media to stay in touch. We're on Instagram and X, formerly known as Twitter. Our handle for both is @FrameNews_. Tag us when you're out in the community and follow us there for daily updates. Our show can be found on YouTube by subscribing to the Access Framingham channel. Hit the bell icon there to ensure you never miss an episode of The Frame. Check us out on Facebook as well, just by searching for The Frame. We'd like to take a moment to let you know that The Frame is an initiative of Access Framingham, an independent nonprofit 501c3, which provides low to no cost training and creative opportunities in broadcast television, podcasting, animation, and video making. Residents, students, organizations, and businesses across the city can become members. Anyone looking to learn something new, host their own show, be around creative people, or get involved in the community they call home can join Access Framingham today by visiting www.accessfram.tv. Access Framingham can be found on RCN Channel 3, RCN HD Channel 1100, Comcast Channel 9, and Verizon Channel 43. That will be it for this week's Framingham News in Focus. We'll be back next week for a recap of some of the biggest stories we've covered in 2023. Until then, we here at The Frame want to thank you for spending time with us tonight, and we'd like to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas. My name is Brendan Fitzpatrick. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.